Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
Because now I know when something happens in our lives that is unexpected, you have to go into it in order to ever have any hope of coming through it. So when you go, guess what? When you come out the other side, you grow.
Brought out more in me than I thought that I didn't even know that I had.
That has given all of us a great hope for what we can do with our own messages, our abilities to deliver, but most importantly, to deliver it in an authentic and very, very intriguing way.
Have you ever been in something or felt something where the only way you felt you could deal with it was to leave, get away? I thought that was the meaning of control. It took me 4.5 years to stop looking around the room of my life, of my journey, of my purpose, digging in cushions for a remote that never existed. Looking, re-looking, going back and upgrading, bringing in and pulling out things that do not serve you must go. Those things out in this world that are designed to bring us down, to keep us down, put their foot on our neck and whisper to us that we're never good enough, they don't whisper. They yell at us from all directions, top to bottom, bottom to top, side to side, side to side, corner to corner, and corner to corner, 365 days. When somebody asks you about yourself, don't you dare whisper. When they ask you to raise your hand, don't you dare half raise it. When they ask you something good about you, you scream it with all you have. Come on now, get up, get up. Tell me who you are. Show me who you are. Greatest truth of all, that not everyone has to remain lost.
Oh, I had a percussion section going on during the opening. Sorry about that. I got carried away. Anyway, good morning, good morning, good morning to you. That's the ADHD that I've always had with me. Can you imagine my poor mothers? No wonder there were so many, right? I was wearing them out. So anyway, good morning to everybody. Welcome to today's installment of Bathrobe Moments. I'm your host. A happy. If you know it. Clap your hands, Lauren. I'm just excited. I'm not kidding you. I used to, God rest her soul, Karen Carpenter. I used to go by, that song Karen Carpenter had, Rainy Days and Mondays. I love you, Karen. You know I do. Cried my eyes out when she left us. But I love Mondays. I absolutely love them because we have to go through Monday to get to Tuesday, and Tuesday to get to Wednesday, so on and so forth. So listen, it's a great starting place, and I wouldn't want to start it with anyone, well, maybe Oprah, other than you. Listen, we're here together fulfilling one of the greatest promises available to all of us. It is the one that guarantees us that when two or more of us comes together and we just have anything that is an agreement, a spirit of being of service to each other, spiritual magic is guaranteed to happen. It's no different today than every other day right here on Bathrobe Moments. Today, I'm really excited. My good friend, George Bailey. I know what you're thinking. It's a Wonderful World, not that one. Okay, we're going to have to find out from George how many people have said that to him. Can you imagine? It's like me. I'm born on the 4th of July, right? And every time I tell somebody, they see my, you're born on the 4th of July? No, they lied on my license. Of course, but hey, George Bailey, it is a wonderful world, and it's becoming an even more wonderful world because of this version of George Bailey. It's George Bailey that's here today. Who is he? He's been here before, but I just love what he's doing. Here is what George Bailey is all about. George Bailey is the president sleep talker. That's with a T, not a W. Don't get it twisted. He's a sleep talker. He could be a sleepwalker as well. Possibly even a sleep eater. Did you see that show on Oprah years ago? See, there goes the ADHD again. Anyway, back to you, George. Enough about me. Anyway, George is also a St. Louis startup. Well, his company, zPods. That's really what gets me excited. Outside of George's wonderful personality, zPods, you guys. It's a St. Louis startup, and also is the recipient of an ARC Grant Award. That is developing sensory-friendly beds. Sensory-friendly beds. You heard me right. For high-energy children. Only 50-some years too late in my mother's book. But anyway, including those with autism. Now, George also sits on the board of directors for Autism Speaks St. Louis and is engaged in, won't you meet me in St. Louis? Sorry, engaged in his community and church. I should have took my meds. George obtained his JD, Juris Doctorate, from Washington University and St. Louis School of Law, and his master's in teaching English to speakers of other languages. I didn't know that. Thank you for spreading that acronym out. And he's also, okay, George, you're turning into an overachiever here, a BA in Chinese. Stuck, completely stuck. From Brigham Young University, he is fluent in Mandarin Chinese. Okay, we're going to challenge him because I know a little. I do. German and Danish. I've eaten a few of those Danishes. Get your heads out of the gutter. George and his wife have 5 children, 2 of which are blessed with autism. So listen, he's not a first timer, so we don't have to do all that. Oh, welcome. He's a tough guy, and he's got something great to share with you today. Put your hearts into this conversation, won't you? But more importantly, well, not more importantly, equally as important is welcoming George. Put some virtual hearts on the screen, won't you? It's our way of applauding. Here he comes, the George Bailey. George, I got 4 words for you. Mr. T made him famous. I pity the fool. I pity you for having to put up with me today because I'm clearly I think I had too. Did I have sugar? No. I'm gonna have a banana though. Good morning, George. How are you?
Doing really well. Good to see you, Lauren. You're cracking me up, man. You're killing me. Loving it.
Well, you
So,
almost killed me earlier because I was like, "Did George oversleep?" Because you might have crawled in one of those zPods, and so comfortable, Because I was like, "It's time for the show," but I should have known. As always, here on time. I want to give you a couple seconds to, get in there, have some private time with everybody. Tell them who you are, and tell them what that is we see behind you, and then I'll come back in. Okay?
excellent. Yeah,
All
sure thing. So I
right.
got up at 5:30 this morning. I'm a early sleeper, early riser. I don't know about you guys out there, but I love the world. I love, I agree with you, Lauren. It's Monday and I'm geared to go. I'm amped. So what you're looking at in the background is just kind of a virtual, kind of show of display of what it is that we do as ZPods. We create an enclosed bed. And if you can imagine sleeping inside of a space, it's actually big enough to fit a twin size mattress. But we've found that a lot of kids love this. A lot of the kids that we work with, they're sleeping in closets, they're sleeping under the bed, they're sleeping I've had kids that we sleep in the bathtub, all sorts of craziness. And so we're creating the ideal cozy space for these kids. And Lauren, yes, we did come far too late. I feel like we kind of missed out there on that one. My brother used to sleep in the closet. I love it. I find it very comfortable. I have, kids who are kind of like high strung, high energy, and they love having these beds. So we actually have them in our home. The real idea, just to get right to the nub, is that we are trying to create the ideal sleep space for anybody and everybody by creating an environment that is responsive to you as an individual. And that's what we're working on.
You know what? It makes so much sense to me. And I want you to talk about what it is about this cubby space because I had bunk beds,
Yeah.
right? As if I had a sleepover. Um, and I would hang the blanket, I would take the comforter thing and turn it sideways so it would hang on the back wall part and in front. And I'd go to bed regular, but I'd go down there and sleep. And, they got used to it. But it just felt so safe. It was like almost like a cocoon. That's how it felt to me, like a cocoon. Talk about why that is so important to high energy kids. And how did you find out about all this?
Oh, great question. So first of all, we're really careful not to make any medical claims. So far, everything that we're working on is still kind of in hypothesis stage, and we've actually talked with a lot of medical professionals to kind of figure out what's going on.
Mhm.
Where it started was that when we brought these beds over from China, we were helping one of our friends develop a Star Wars themed living space, and they need something really convincing. So we were using capsule beds. You might see them in like Japanese airports or Chinese hostels. So they were already a thing. But what we did that was a little bit new, there were a couple things. Number one was that when we were looking for, we sold half these beds to the friend in Florida. And then the other half we brought back to St. Louis, and we're like, well, what do we do with these beds? They're crazy. They look like spaceships.
Sorry.
Yep. Oh, no, 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 you can make I
Remember,
like the sound effects, we're
every
good.
time you do it.
So in any case, what happened was that, we had friends who would kind of poke us and say, "You guys need to look at the autism community." And I was the first person to say, "Nope, we're not gonna do that," because I have 2 autistic kids, and I kinda thought like, "Nah, we have so many things that people are trying to get us to buy and, do this for your kid, do this for your son," and for me, I just felt like, it just didn't make any sense. Why would that work? And this goes back to your question, like, well, why does it work? And so I thought, no, this not going to work.
Did we tell them what it is yet?
Oh yeah, yeah, just an enclosed bed, kind of looks like a pod, a capsule, And any case, the doctors and professionals that we talked to, though, said you need to really think about this, and kind of consider on the possibility that maybe this could be helpful, that some kids really like this. We get a lot of kids who, sleep in these tight spaces. Well, we found a young woman, 13 years old, with schizophrenia and autism, who was sleeping in her closet for 4 hours a night, and that was it. Her sleep was horrible. And we set her and her family up with the bed, and we told the mom, like, hey, we're not going to make any sort of promises because we just don't know. But this young woman, her sleep jumped from 4 hours a night to 10 hours a night. And that was almost 3 years ago. So
Well,
she's been sleeping amazingly well for the last 3 years just because we set her up with this space. And now have worked with, it's got to be over 100 families now that we've worked with. Yeah,
really?
which has
George,
been
the last time you were here, I think we could count them on two hands.
Yeah, so it's been a really big jump. So we worked with probably in our first couple of years about 60 to 70, and then we have just shipped out the new beds. And that's the second thing that's going on is that
Oh,
we actually redesigned the bed. We listened to the parents and said, okay, we like what we have. What needs to change? And they gave us a lot of suggestions, and there were some things that we took off the other bed that it would have been nice to keep, but they were too flimsy. There were parts that were breaking too easily. And so we made the bed more durable. We made the bed easier to construct. We made the bed, safer on the door side. And we made all these changes. And then we started shipping out the new beds 2 months ago. And so that's why we have an increase in number of
My
families that we work with.
zPod?
Oh,
oh,
yeah, there we
wait.
go. Yeah. You
No,
wanted to
wait.
check
I
out
was
the little
just in the
commercial
set.
thing that we do. No, it's all good.
Can we
Uh,
show them?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this ought to give people like a solid idea of what it is that we're building. I think that they'll really dig looking at it, very futuristic.
Okay, so take a look.
It's easier for an autistic person to sleep in there.
A zPod helps me sleep better.
So zPod allows for complete control of your sleep environment.
The big idea is how do we help people sleep better? I'm George Bailey, and I'm the president of zPods.
My name is Jeff Wade, and I am one of the co-founders of zPods.
I like that I can close the zPod and that it's around me so nothing can come in there.
Micah is 10. She was staying up for like 3 days at a time. We tried weighted blankets, melatonin. We've tried a sleep study because we thought she had sleep apnea. My experience with the zPod has been wonderful. Micah's sleep has changed tremendously. I'm getting more sleep because she's getting sleep.
Because of her autism diagnosis and her schizophrenia diagnosis. She was up all night.
And I wasn't doing well in school. I used to sleep in the closet.
That was the only place that she was feeling comfortable at the time. Since she started with the zPod, her sleeping has improved. The first night, she was in bed on time and asleep.
My son, Juden, he's neurotypical. It takes him 2 hours to get to bed at night. But with zPod, it's completely transformed his sleeping.
With Joseph, he's autistic. He's very high energy, high anxiety. Joseph would just bounce around his room all the time at night. Joseph has been using his bed now for almost 2 years. It has become like a real nook for him, just a place where he just feels restored.
Helped him decompress, helped him wind down.
I read in my zPod, I play games in my zPod.
Now that he's sleeping better, I think that all of us are sleeping better. We have taken all of the suggestions that we've received from parents about how we can improve this technology, and we've put together a really exciting new bed that we're going to be releasing onto the market.
So we've partnered with a local manufacturer who's invested into zPod.
We've got speakers in the new zPods that will allow you to play nature tracks or meditation tracks.
We're going to be creating what we call a sleepscape, where the sleep environment changes according to your individual preference. What we want to do is we want to give a name to sleep that gets kids excited to do this thing that is critical to their health.
I could recommend it to good people. Have you ever slept in the zPod?
Wow. So, first thing that comes to mind, well, that's a lie, because 10 different things came to mind.
It's all good.
But the first thing you know what it really made me think about was when I was a kid and I went into the hospital to get my tonsils out. How scared I was.
Yes.
And I didn't get any sleep before my tonsillectomy the next morning because there's all of these, you hear people walking and machines going off and things beeping and people, it just was, it was, yeah, it was traumatizing.
It's a terrible setting for sleep, and we hear this a lot actually. And
I
we've
wonder,
actually we've been looking at the possibility of finding a way to get these in hospitals in a manner that where it conforms to the. There are a lot of regulations and rules about hospital beds and what's required, and so we're reimagining kind of ways that we can do that,
oh
and we
yeah,
have some other ideas about how we can do that. But your point is that any place where a child feels anxious, that child will likely not be able to sleep, or at least not sleep the way that they should be sleeping. And when if your room becomes that place and it's just too big and there's too many nooks and there's too many places for monsters to get you, then you are that child. And we find that those kinds of kids that we find sleeping under the bed, sleeping in the closet and such, they love it. They flourish there and they're comfortable because it's a lot more comfortable than those other places. And they still have that feeling of
and it
security.
doesn't seem weird.
Yes.
See, when I was sleeping under the bed, I mean, it was fun. It was an adventure for me, but it
Mhm.
wasn't the kind of thing I wanted outsiders to know.
Yes.
And I used to beg my mom, don't talk about that because
Yes.
I don't want people to think I'm weird and this, that, and the other. So, George, it also makes me think about how parents, or maybe even you as a kid, how the first time I went to camp,
Mm.
same thing. They had to come pick me up the next day because I just could not sleep. And I was getting sleepy when it was time to get up.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
and a lot of kids go home that first couple days because of just not being able to feel comfortable enough to sleep. So tell us, okay, you know about the autistic approach because you have two autistic children.
Yep.
What other things? We heard about the schizophrenic girl uh, dealing with bipolar schizophrenia.
Yep.
So, what is it that makes this work?
I think there are two things that could be at play. Number one is that sleep, at least the sleep initiation, is a psychological. There is a psychological component to it, and where you are high stress and high anxiety, the likelihood that you're going to be able to fall asleep is very low. We know that. So is this kind of having almost like a placebo effect? Where the child is kind of just feeling calm because it's not magic. There's nothing magical. It's like it's an enclosed bed where you have control over your sound, your lighting, to the temperature to a small extent. And I think that is probably one of the big things. But one of the other theories that we're working with is maybe that there's something happening with your vestibular sense, kind of your sense of balance and pressure. And so the fact that it's just a contained unit, maybe the air changes just a little bit or something like that, and that helps you also to relax. But all of those things come down to giving the child a feeling of just being able to settle. We are actually in the process of putting together the capital to do clinical trials. And the clinical trials are a really big deal for us. I mean, that was one of the things where I was adamant from the start, like, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to be able to test its efficacy, and not just make claims, not just go out there and like, hey, look at this, it's going to help your kids sleep so well. Maybe it will. Your kid's different from other kids. I don't know that.
Right.
And so we're really hesitant to make any sort of a claim, that would I don't want to play on the fears of parents because I
Sure.
think that a lot of these parents, like, they've been dealing with these sleep issues for a long time. They're wiped out, and so they're looking for anything. But I think to the extent that you've got, high anxiety, you're going to have loss of sleep, and that's what we're designed to do. We want to help those kids not be so anxious.
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
So, what about the parent who may be a little hesitant because they're like, okay, but Our daughter's 12. She's going to be growing up, going into high school, and hopefully then off to college. Is there a risk of her becoming dependent on sleeping inside the Z Pod? And then what happens when it's time for her to go off to school? She's
Yeah.
going to tote her
Well,
Z Pod to the dorm with her.
Great question. I mean, and that's one of the most challenging questions I get. I've probably gotten that question 2 or 3 times,
I
so
imagine so.
and it is something that we think about. And here are a couple of different answers. I'm going to split this up into, a couple ways of thinking about this.
Okay.
Number one, if your kid's not sleeping, that's a problem right now. And it has really big health, implications. And so we're not doing medications, we're not doing like, chewable melatonin, we're, nothing like that. And so the dependency issue, at least it's not going to be chemical, and that's something we can start with.
Mm,
Now, and the fact is, we start with
good
the
one.
environment. Yeah, and that's a big deal, and I
You-
think that chemicals the last place you want to go. I'm not saying
Right.
never that your kid should never be taking medication.
But
I
that's
don't
the
know. I've
last
talked.
option.
Yeah,
I,
I like there's
I
some,
believe.
talk with parents whose kids are prescribed melatonin, quinidine, any number of chemicals, and I get that. I'm not trying to naysay that, but I am saying that if your child, if we find something that is actually working for them, and it doesn't mean that they have to be, taking some of these medications, that's a good thing. Now, in the meantime, you've got 6 years to kind of work on the answer to those other questions. What happens when they go out into society? And maybe you can, find a way to just kind of wean them off, or maybe do we have to wean them off? So that raises the question, is this really a bad thing? Are we all going to be sleeping in these things in the future? I don't know. Now, from a raw business interest perspective, I have to disclose that I have a bias, and that is like, hey, I love the day, when everybody's buying these and my business is growing and stuff like that. But I don't want to do anything that is negative for people. And so if there's a real, reason why it's negative, then, we don't want to go there. That being said, we are working on kind of like, well, what are some of the other things that we can introduce, some of the other sleep solutions that might accommodate somebody who is not able to just bring their bed with them? For example, we're making it so that the control panel can be taken out and you can use it in any setting, and then set up your lights here and your, fan system here and your
Use
speakers
it.
here. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, we're actually working on technology to sync all of those things up and make them responsive to who you are as a sleeper. So we're thinking about all of these different angles.
You
But
know,
at the end,
George,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry to butt in.
No worry.
Excuse me, but it makes me think. I'm gonna tell you what I see. I believe one day, starting with like places like Disneyland and Disney World,
Hmm.
where a lot of kids come to sleep, that they will have suites available with Z Pods in them
Yeah.
for kids to be able to go and have the greatest experience on earth, just like the kids who are sleeping right outside the pod in a regular bed.
Yes.
I really believe that. I really
I
believe
believe it too. I
because I never got invited to sleepovers because the word got around I couldn't stay the night.
Yep, yep. And that's the thing is that I fully agree with you. I think we're going in that direction where we're trying to find, first of all, sleep tech is a really big industry. I mean, it's huge and it's growing because we're realizing this is 1/3 of our lives. This has serious health implications, and so there's a lot of attention being given to this, and we're trying to think outside of the box. And so, yes, I do think that hospitality in organizations are looking for ways to give their customers the best sleep. And I think that for kids, I don't know if you've ever traveled with kids, but I have, and it's horrible. Like when you get, because
Yeah.
they're bouncing off the walls and they're so excited, their little bodies can't handle all the excitement. And so, they're bouncing on your bed and they won't settle and stuff like that. And so to your point, that's where I think we come in and we say, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if your kid had, his or her own little suite, your sleep suite,
Yeah,
basically within your hotel room, so that
exactly.
you're not separated.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's awesome. Listen, we're going to take a brief break. I promise it'll be
totally.
that long. When we return, I want to talk to George Bailey regarding Why is it called insomnia in adults? And this isn't what it's called with these kids. We're going to learn more about that and a whole bunch more, we hope, when we return. Don't you go away. Great time to share out this broadcast. We'll be right back. Welcome back to today's installment of Bathrobe Moments. I'm your host, Lauren Michaels Harris, and we're here today with my good friend, George Bailey. As I bring George back in, I wanted to just watch a couple minutes of a clip I found on the benefits of a good night's sleep. A lot of us don't realize, well, we do, but we don't know all of the reasons. A lot goes on when we're sleeping, and a lot of things can only happen when we're sleeping. Take a look.
It's 4 a.m. and the big test is in 8 hours, followed by a piano recital. You've been studying and playing for days, but you still don't feel ready for either. So what can you do? Well, you can drink another cup of coffee and spend the next few hours cramming and practicing. But believe it or not, you might be better off closing the books, putting away the music, and going to sleep. Sleep occupies nearly a third of our lives, but many of us give surprisingly little attention and care to it. This neglect is often the result of a major misunderstanding. Sleep isn't lost time, or just a way to rest when all our important work is done. Instead, it's a critical function, during which your body balances and regulates its vital systems, affecting respiration and regulating everything from circulation to growth and immune response. That's great, but you can worry about all those things after this test, right? Well, not so fast. It turns out that sleep is also crucial for your brain, with a fifth of your body's circulatory blood being channeled to it as you drift off. And what goes on in your brain while you sleep is an intensely active period of restructuring that's crucial for how our memory works.
So right there, when they said, I was like, aha, I don't have senior moments. I need another hour and a half of sleep.
Yes.
There it is. Because, but seriously, George, let's talk about the adult side of the issue of lack of sleep. How many parents of zPods, owners, how many parents have admitted to you that they've gone in there and spent the night?
Oh, all the time. That very frequent, because they're surrendering. And I don't mean that it as an insult to them or judgment or anything like that. I'd be in the same situation too. The stories that we get are heart-wrenching. I mean, like the parents that call us, I mean, they call us when they need an elephant gun. Like that they need that kind of a solution where, and I'm not talking against kids, sorry about that. I'm talking more like just the size and scope of the solution has to be really kind of dramatic in a way. It's just like, I just want to redo the whole bed situation. Yeah, I get it all the time.
Well, I'm going to say this too. My mind just keeps clicking, because another thing I thought about was when I'd say the first 5 or 6 months is what it feels like. But it was so long ago, I can't be certain on the number. But it was a minute when I was new to the foster system. foster care, and I was still having night terrors and
Mm.
nightmares of when they took me from our home. And I remember the only way I could stop from having a panic attack was to put wrap myself up like a mummy in the blankets. I would cover my head. It needed to feel tight like a sarcophagus all the way around me for me to start coming down. And I'd wake up like that. So I know it would send me into slumber. So PTSD
Yes.
is where I was going with this. Because I know that's what that was. I know now as an adult. Have you thought about that or talked to any, people
Yes,
about?
we have, and one of the things that's always challenging about introducing something so kind of bizarre as what we're doing, because it really is
Unhead?
different. This idea, like, hey, you should be sleeping inside of a cocoon, is kind of this. Some people just like, nah, it's not for me. That being said, we try to keep focused and disciplined on kind of our original niche, and that is autism. But we're seeing that now we feel more comfortable coming out and looking at some of these, outward, these adjacent communities. PTSD in children is one we're really looking at it, but we're actually really looking at PTSD in adults as well. Uh, it's just that I think that it depends on the underlying cause of the PTSD. If the PTSD is related to some trauma issues around being in a tight space, you're probably not going to enjoy this.
Right.
But if the PTSD has to do with like abuse factors or loneliness or anything like that, for example, one population that we're actually working on right now, um, getting close to is we were talking with a young woman in Arizona, and she works all the time with teenage girls who have escaped the sex trade. And you'd better believe that the PTSD there is substantial. And so the idea that we can come along with something here to give them a feeling of safety and security so that they can get the sleep necessary for their health. And the thing is that dreaming, at least it's hypothesized that dreaming has a substantial role in helping us to process trauma. So the more sleep you're able to get, the better you're able to process some of these really horrible
I'm
experiences. So if
sorry.
we can get in there, absolutely. And I would say to the audience, if you know people who are kind of movers and shakers in that space or decision makers, we'd love to talk with them, because the idea that we could help set kids up with these beds who are in need of that level of comfort and to test it. Right? Again, we're going back to what I said originally. We're not claiming that this is going to work for that child. We are saying that we've seen enough to believe that it could.
I
And yeah,
I automatically think of things like Ronald McDonald House. I think
yes.
of so many different applications, and I just it's so interesting how I can see that kid, meaning myself, and
Mhm.
how many different ways that affected me. It was just like when I went through my bedwetting stage, that
Yes.
horrible secret you don't want anyone to know about. So you don't want your friends to come over. You're afraid to accept invitations to go to a sleepover. It makes it difficult for the family when you go places, even staying with family members.
Yes.
Um,
And I wanted to say something on that point, and this relates back to sleep, and that is that, one of my children has gone through that. And it was very, very painful for that child and embarrassing. Now, I actually really feel grateful. I think that we handled it right, but that's because I was already thinking about sleep as I was experiencing this. That one of the things that a lot of parents do is they create a lot of shame around that. And so I just decided this isn't a big deal. And guess what? That child was able to get through that without feeling all this shame, because I never lectured this child. There was a point where I was like, "Oh, can't you just get it together?" That was very quick, and then I realized, like, no, no, no. I think that the more that we stigmatize this, now this goes back to sleep, and this is the big point that we're trying to make. This is the big picture with kids, Lauren, that we want to make, and that is that we are selling sleep to children incorrectly. We are making it something to dread. We're angry at our kids when we tell them, "Go to sleep," like we have all of these negative associations around sleep. And yet to the point of what your video, the TED video that you shared was
You
beautiful
think?
about that. Right there. That's peak doing it wrong. And yet, I know that the author's tongue in cheek, and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, that's that's peak frustration with sleep right
But
there, right?
but that right there
Yeah,
speaks to the issue
it does.
of
And
please go to
so what
sleep.
we wanna do is we wanna repackage sleep. And not just with the products, because this bed that we've created, it's now made in the United States. We're very proud of that. It is kind of, we're looking at, like, all of a sudden kids are looking at our bed and they're like, "Holy cow, I want that bed!" Right? Love the flag. And every single other product that we're going to be reaching out to, because that's the plan, is that we're going to reaching out to other products. How do you market these to kids in a way that messages positively to them that sleep is good? And again, back to that TED video, there was this idea for years that sleep was lost time. That's what it was. It was just waste. Like, I'll sleep when I die. That's the mentality of Silicon Valley. Okay. That's the startup. That's the kind of, your financial banking institutions kind of mentality. And yet the benefits are extraordinary, and we need to get those out there.
So, what about the person? I know I can hear somebody thinking right now. I hear you. They're going, "What a great idea for my niece or my daughter,
Yes.
um, or maybe even myself."
Yeah.
But it just looks so expensive. It's so high tech. It's like the Jetsons. How in the world can a person afford such a thing? Talk about that.
Mm.
How do people get this into their lives when they need it if they're not independently wealthy?
Number one elephant in the room. And because it's probably the number one thing that we've given thought to in terms of, like, okay, how do we make this more accessible? Because
Right.
if it is a solution, then it has to be accessible. Now, we've achieved this on a number of levels already, and we have a plan for making it even more accessible moving forward. In terms of having achieved it right now, the number one way that we've done this is that we've had super parents who've run out and said, "I'm going to get this funded by my state." And they have trailblazed on the behalf of other parents by successfully obtaining what are called disability waivers, or funding by disability waivers in a number of states. And those states would include Missouri, Minnesota, California, Ohio, and Massachusetts. So we feel very fortunate. Number two is that we've also managed to start selling these through what are called providers of DME, or durable medical equipment. So,
Durable medical equipment.
yeah, and these guys, on a state by state basis, they have a very firm understanding of how to get devices like ours funded through, state disability waivers, through assistive technology programs, through grants and things like that. I mean, they're
Like
really
CPAP
creative.
machines and
Yeah.
all kinds of different things that help people have a better quality of life.
Yes. And so the best thing you can do is you reach out to your local provider of DME. And you ask them, "Do you sell zPods? Can you help us get the funding?" Or reach out to us, and we may be able to help you. Put you in touch with someone that has those kinds of those sources. We want to make this more accessible, not less.
Wouldn't it be great if insurance companies?
Yes. So now that's the long-term game. And when going back to my, mentioning that we're doing clinical trials, that's why. Because we want to be able to create a persuasive case. Like, look, okay, so let's take Natalie, for example. You saw her in the video. This is the young woman who was sleeping 4 hours a night in a
Yeah.
closet. She's not the only one.
And she's the one that what she said stuck out to me the most. She goes, but it keeps, I don't have to worry about someone coming in.
Yes, there's a
People said
feeling
that
of
stuck with
safety.
me.
It's very, going back to the psychology, that is a very real thing. Now, Natalie, what it doesn't say in the video is that she had spent 11 consecutive days in the hospital being treated for severe sleep deprivation. Now, you tell me how, like, you add up the cost on those 11 days,
Oh, good point.
and who's paying that? The insurance companies is. And where does that eventually fall? That falls on us, because, that means our premiums are going to, see an increase. But the point is that, would you rather spend that money on 11 days in the hospital, or would you rather just set them up with a safe space where they feel, safe enough?
Right.
And what the clinical trials help us to do, and the great thing is that one of the people who's in on the clinical trials, her name is Dr. Christina McRae. She's been very helpful in helping us get this far. Um, is that she's published on sleep and autism, so she understands where those two things intersect. And for us to be able to make that case through third parties, and then we get to further isolate the profile of the child for whom this is effective, because we're not pretending that this is effective for every child. We're very upfront with everybody, like, this may work for your kid and maybe it won't. Best case scenario, woohoo, sleeping 8 hours a day for the parents, 10 hours a day for the child. Worst case scenario, coolest spaceship bed in the universe, and some people are willing to take that chance. But we want to know with greater specificity for whom this is going to work. And then the insurance companies feel safer saying, okay, we'll spend the money here so that we don't have to spend the money in other areas, or
Right.
more money in other areas. And that's really insurance. The bottom line is, what's the least expensive for us? And for us, the bottom line is, what's the greatest path to accessibility? And what can we do over time to make it less expensive, to make,
Mhm.
all of these things? The fact of the matter is, every new technology, every new idea is going to be, yeah, you're going to have your early adopters, and it's going to be more expensive or less accessible up front, and then greater accessibility comes down the line.
And George, having done a crap load of speaking engagements at everything K through 6, K
Yeah.
through 8, all of that, and workshops and stuff where you're sitting there and they have breakout sessions and whatnot, especially like middle schoolers.
Yeah.
And you'll see they're constantly saying, especially those charter schools and stuff where they're in uniforms and whatnot. Da 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 da. They're on them like military school almost. But there's inevitably always that one kid that cannot stay awake.
Uh-huh.
I remember when I would get in trouble for not being able to stay
Yes.
awake. And it ground my secret in like a cigarette butt in
Yeah.
the ground, where now I really don't want people to know because I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yep. And what happens when you're trying to go to sleep, because you're telling yourself, like, I gotta sleep, I gotta sleep, I gotta
And
sleep.
you can't, it gets worse.
Yeah, it just gets worse. And this goes back to what I was saying, is that we're selling it wrong. There's nothing to be ashamed of for any child who can't sleep, because guess what? They want to sleep. Their bodies want to sleep so bad. Okay, that has nothing to do. It's not a moral failing that they're not sleeping well.
Right.
And so we need to find practical solutions to package sleep in a way that makes them kind of feel like, yeah, this is great. I feel good about this.
Well, George, do you think that teachers, school administrators, even parents who are now more and more often since COVID finding themselves homeschooling, what are some of the warning signs that most parents peek in?
Yeah.
To see, before they go to bed, that everybody's sleeping soundly, everything is as it should be. Excuse me, but I was one of those kids. I knew when it was like a warden. I knew when the warden was coming to peek in. I could play possum. I could make the sounds and everything.
Oh, Mike.
All of it. And be wide awake as soon as they walk away or the door closed. And I go back to what I was doing because I'm going to be up anyway, reading or whatever.
Yeah.
What are some of the warning signs that your child could be, or a child you have contact with, could be having a sleep issue that no one is aware of?
Great question. First, I want to disclaim that, I'm not a medical professional. And,
Yeah.
and so, and I would strongly recommend, there are a number of books that are really outstanding on this issue. I've got one back here. Maybe I can slip and check. I'm actually reading through this one right here. I really enjoy it. It's called Solve Your Child's Sleep Problems. This is,
Okay.
Richard Ferber, I think. Oh, goodness.
Ferber.
These screens, honestly, if I didn't have this screen up right now, all you'd see behind me is dirty laundry. No,
Oh,
my bad. clean laundry that needs to be folded.
That needs to be folded. That was here.
Yeah, so
I got it
it's still
done.
there. It's a shame,
Oh, you got kids.
Yeah, so
Oh,
like those kids that are covering up their sleep problems, I'm covering up my clean laundry problem. So
that's
here's how to
right.
know if there's not like clean laundry in the back that needs to be folded. Okay, with that kid, I would say number one, behavior. It's going to show up in their behavior. If they're just off the wall and manic, that is probably a sign that they're not getting good sleep. Number two is if you hear heavy snoring in a child, you should probably take a look at that. And then, of course, when you see the kid nodding off, yeah, I mean that's also a really good sign that they're not getting enough sleep. Now, why it could be, I mean, there's any number of things. Maybe they don't have the right sleep environment. Maybe they've got insomnia. Maybe they've got sleep apnea. Which of course causes a lot of those sounds, or maybe they have narcolepsy, which is rare in children, but possible.
Yes. Yes.
And so, the key thing is ask your doctor, but also recognize that your doctor gets very little training in sleep.
Well,
But
Doc,
ask him about the possibility of sleep, and then they can do like a sleep test or something like that, or
well,
they can send them to a sleep center. Yeah.
here's another thing. Parents, get ready to agree. Because I remember when I was a kid, the best sleep ever was when we were coming home from someplace in the car and it was nighttime.
Yeah.
It was the best sleep. I could sleep like a rag doll
Yeah.
all the way, and they drug me. If they threw me over their shoulder, I'm all the way till they put me in my bed. I could feel them taking my clothes off. But it was that ride in that car. And I know parents who get up, take their child into the car, and drive around until they're asleep. George, do you think it could be not just the motion, but that enclosed space?
I wonder, again, that I think you bring. I don't know if I've ever considered on that question. I have to admit,
Telling
on
you,
like why? Well, why would the car? I think it's a little bit of both. I
think it's
think
a
that
little bit of
it
both.
could be the space, but let me tell you that the best night of sleep I've ever gotten, at least in recent memory, about 2015, I used to work in financial services, and I was in Laguna Beach,
Ooh,
Laguna,
love it.
California, and they
Yeah.
put me in a surf and sand hotel, very bottom floor, and right there, the waves were literally hitting the foundation of that building. And there was something so soothing about that experience and the ocean and the feeling of it, the sound of it, which
Yeah.
is characterized with,
Yeah.
there's white noise, which is that, sound, but the ocean is more like what we call pink noise, just this steady, throb. And it kind of, to me, it all seems reminiscent of the mother's womb. And so going back to the car, I could see that as having a little
Yeah.
bit of that effect. Now, I want to steal a little bit more time and tell you this is where we're going, Lauren,
Mhm.
is to go to your question. How do you know if your kid's having sleep problems? Our goal is to have sensors in all of our beds, which we're working on right now. We're working with some very talented researchers at Washington University in St. Louis to develop as many non-touch sensors as possible. And maybe you can use your Aura Ring or your Fitbit or your Apple Watch, whatever, but for
Yay.
some kids, they don't want anything touching them. So we want to have the right kind of sensors or a mattress sensor. We want to integrate those sensors in with our system. And then in 40 years, this is what's going to be happening. Okay. Maybe it's us that's going to do it. Maybe it's someone else. I really hope that we get to be a part of the journey.
Yeah.
Here's what's going to be happening. You're going to get in your bed. Sensor technology is going to detect all of your sleep performance. It's going to be integrated with your sleep environment, and your sleep environment is going to be resting on effectively an artificial intelligence platform, and it's going to be responsive to you as a sleeper. And even when you go from your home in Chicago, you're in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
And you fly to Tokyo, then your sensor technology is going to accommodate your jet lag, and it's also going to be assessing how your environment needs to respond
Yeah.
in order for you to be able to maximize. Now there's nothing that can per se remove jet lag that quickly, but at least you can accommodate that factor and give people better sleep. This is happening. It's
Yeah.
already in process. Everybody's working on this problem. We happen to have fallen on one piece of the puzzle that I think is really appealing, and that is a sleep environment that's enclosed that can have all of those factors with it.
Oh, well, I know you're onto something because
Yeah.
we had a lake house that had a lower level room with no windows. We go in there, it's like sleeping like the dead. And at Aunt Tia's house, my husband's aunt, she has one of those rooms downstairs, and we can sleep and wake up. It's like noon. We're like, what in the world? Yeah, right. But it is so good. Listen, we're out of time, but we still have a minute. So tell people where they can go to find more information. I don't have the link, but go ahead and tell people.
No worries.
I'll drop it in the comment section afterwards.
Cool. Okay, it's zpods.tech or zpodsforsleep.com.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, either of those places, and we have a contact us. And even if it's like, oh, I just don't have the money, or contact us, because you don't know what we might know about how we can help and things like that. We want to help.
Okay. So I'm gonna put that. I just put that into the comment section, zpods.tech. Okay, George, thank you so much. We're out of time. It was great. Come back anytime you want to give us an update. I don't need to wish you luck. I think you're onto something that is going to change the world. And I'm so excited for you. Thank you for coming and pouring into us and sharing with us. Thank you to all of you out there, Missy, Robert, all the rest of you. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, for another episode of Bathrobe Moments. I'll meet you out tomorrow morning right on the front porch at 8 a.m. Get out today and be the best version of yourself. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.
Bye, Lauren. You're too fun, man. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye, all.